Hello guys, and welcome to my newest tier list video. This time I go over the colony tiles, rank them from F to S, and give you my opinion on the situations you want to be trading with them, or even build a colony on them. Let's talk colonies in general first. If you want to skip this part and get straight to the ranking, I'll leave a timestamp on the screen. You can interact with colony tiles in a few different ways, and every one of these interactions determines the strength of the colony tile and will influence my rating. Trading, the most basic interaction, costs you 3 energy, 3 titanium, or 9 mega credits. Most of the time, 3 energy will be the cheapest and most cost-effective way to trade. That's why energy production is worth a lot more when playing with this expansion. But there are certainly times when you want to trade with titanium or cash as well. Either to deny your opponents the trade, or you're floating titanium, or just because you're making a profit or good points with the trade. Building a colony is a pretty big investment, and in most cases I wouldn't use the standard project, because as with the other standard projects, it is overpriced in comparison to project cards. But again, there are exceptions to this rule, which I will go over later. One last thing, when talking about the colony tiles, I will put the estimated value of their placement bonus on screen, as I won't talk that much about it, but it's an interesting fact. But let's get started with the tier list. In my opinion, Callisto is a solid colony tile. In the base case, where you don't have a use for the additional energy, it is underwhelming, as it is just a worse IO. But in cases where you can use the energy productively, either because you have an oxygen bumper or a card like Physics Complex, Callisto can be handy. Callisto can also be used effectively in the case where you have 2 trade fleets but less than 6 energy production. You can fly once to grab the energy from Callisto for the second fleet, as well as a little more, effectively leaving you with a surplus of power. The colony bonus gives you 3 power and is also quite strong. Just building a colony on Callisto gives you the ability to use your trade fleet whenever someone else is flying there. So I would put Callisto in B tier. And a small notice, Callisto will not help you with Industrialist, as the energy collected in the last gen will not be converted into heat before the award is evaluated. Ceres is really useful if you have steel targets, as you can collect inordinate amounts of steel here. If you compare it to the other currency colony tiles, Luna and Triton, and do the math, you see that Ceres delivers the highest value. Ceres is actually so strong that I value steel production cards less whenever this colony tile is in play, as I can easily get a lot of steel whenever I trade with Ceres. The colony here will also pay off quite fast, as you get 2 MC per turn and 4 MC per trade. So if every turn someone is trading with Ceres, a standard project colony pays off in 3 turns, assuming you can use the steel. Overall, Ceres is really solid, and I'd rank it in A tier. My only issue with it is that useful steel targets that score points are sometimes hard to come by in the late game. One last thing, if miner or industrialist are active, you can sometimes steal first place away from your opponents if they are not careful. Enceladus is really situational, as there are only 7 microbe cards with a 2-for-1 point payoff, or that are in my opinion in another way top tier microbe collecting cards. And some of them have straight up dumb restrictions. But if you have one of these cards, then Enceladus can pay off massively, as it gives you much higher return than the other special research colony tiles Miranda and Titan. But don't fool yourself and play a card like Tardigrades hoping to get a lot of points with it in combination with Enceladus. This will rarely be worth the effort. So Enceladus is very situational, but can be strong in select situations. That puts it in D tier for me. By far the most unique colony tile, Europa. Instead of instant return, you get a production boost when trading here. Also, building a colony here allows you to place an ocean, and you get 1 MC whenever someone trades with Europa. What can I say about it? Well, all of its bonuses are interesting, but not particularly strong, and they don't synergize incredibly well. The colony bonus is strictly weaker than Luna's, the placement bonus is just a slightly cheaper SP Aquifer, and trading here for the money production is probably never worth it. Collecting 1 power prod in the early to mid game or 1 plant prod in the mid to late game can be very nice, but often the other colony tiles are just more attractive in comparison. So for me, Europa joins Enceladus in D tier. Ganymede is deceptively strong. You can use this colony tile as a safety net against getting your plants destroyed by your opponents. If you have 5 plants in the bank, getting hit by an asteroid before being able to convert them is extremely painful, and Ganymede can help avoid this. Another upside is that Ganymede can help you secure Gardener in the early game. Still, if you're not going for a ground game, you more often than not have no use for plants, and also, in my opinion, the placement and/or colony bonus are a little too weak. So I'm going to put Ganymede in C tier. Io is in my opinion the weakest colony tile. In the games I play, Io gets often neglected until its tract is maxed out, and then someone finally trades with it to collect the 13 heat. The fact that you can't use heat for anything else than raising a temperature track, except for a few select cases, and that Callisto has a higher maximum payoff that allows you to actually raise the temperature twice with one trade, is another punch in the gut. I really think Io should have 3 heat as a colony bonus. The placement bonus also seems to be the weakest one of all colonies. All of this together means I have to put Io in F tier, but don't hesitate to trade to it if its track is high up and you can basically collect 1 temperature step for 3 power. Also, be careful with buying Thermalist when Io is in play. Luna is the most basic but also most flexible colony tile and in contention for the best colony tile in the game. It gives a higher payout than Triton, but a lower payout than Ceres, but I will still put it higher than Ceres straight into S tier. Being able to use MC for every application in the game, and the fact that every player no matter the strategy needs money and will therefore be interested in trading with Luna, are the reasons for this placement. Miranda is the colony tile with what seems like the smallest return for a trip, but with a good reason. Getting its maximum payoff can equal 3 points on a 1-for-1 animal card, which also explains what initially might seem weird, namely that you don't get an additional animal as a colony bonus. But don't get me wrong, drawing a card is also insanely strong, and strictly better than the colony bonus on Pluto, which we have not talked about yet, but is top tier if I might spoil that much. I just played a game a few days back where one of my opponents picked Arclight, played Meat Industry and put a colony on Miranda. Trading there every turn was her priority and it paid off massively even while only collecting the animals on her core. But of course I will not place Miranda in S tier. For that it is way too situational and gives too little payoff if you only have a 2-for-1 animal card. For me, Miranda is B tier overall, but of course can be insanely strong in the right situation. It will probably come as no surprise that I will place Pluto in the S tier category. Cards like AI Central, Development Center and Restricted Area are considered top tier project cards and for a reason. Cards are the primary limiting resource in the game. If you don't develop card draw, you only get a pick of 4 cards at the beginning of every generation. Having to play suboptimal cards that don't really fit into your strategy, or outright having no cards to play and resorting to standard projects, will hurt your game a lot. With a colony on Pluto and flying there whenever you can, this will happen much less often. Also, Pluto helps you with securing Planner, as early card draw is otherwise hard to come by. It is true that Pluto's colony bonus is weaker than Miranda's, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Miranda's is just insane. Also, Pluto's colony bonus combos very well with drawing cards by trading, as you're likely to pick up cards that you don't like. This in turn also means that I think the colony bonus is much better when you yourself trade, and not someone else. But even then, it is basically a free mass U activation. So I think Pluto is probably the best colony tile in the game, and you should prioritize placing a colony here, maybe even with a standard project, as it's one of the most often visited colony tiles in the game. Titan is the last of the special resource colony tiles, and I think it is somewhat of the same strength as Miranda, meaning that I will place it in B tier. But why? It gives lower payoff than Enceladus, but also there are no floater cards with a 1-for-1 point conversion, as it is the case with Miranda. Well, that is true, but you have to consider that there are many more floater cards than microbe cards. There are 17 floater collecting cards versus 11 for microbes. Also, the concentration of 2-for-1 or otherwise top tier floater collecting cards is much higher. Here are just some examples. I have seen some nasty rounds with floating habs or Jovian lanterns scoring double-digit points, in part due to Titan being in the game. At some point this happened so often in a row that we decided to not play with Titan for a while. But all in all, Titan is of course a situational colony tile that is worth trading to if you have a good floater card. It can also help you to get Hoverlord quite fast. So in my opinion, B tier is justified. Triton, the last of the currency colony tiles, and in my opinion the weakest one. It is true that it's harder to accumulate titanium production than MC or steel prod, but I just can't ignore the fact that it gives even lower payoff than Luna, which is much more flexible, and much less payoff than Ceres. Of course, if you play with Turmoil, titanium often gains in value, namely whenever Unity is voted in power. But this is only a small saving grace. For securing a last-second miner, Triton is also much weaker than Ceres, and with that I will place Triton in B tier. Thanks for watching my tier list of the colony tiles in Terraforming Mars. I hope you found it interesting. Let me know in the comments which one you would have placed differently and why. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, which helps my channel a lot. Otherwise, see you in the next video.